Hi, welcome to another episode of Show and Tell Books. I'm Amber,
And I'm Chantel.
and today we're talking about Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. We're going to have different opinions on this, and I think that's what's going to make this a fun chat.
I'm excited to see your thoughts on it and kind of explain my thought process too, because we do have differing opinions on this. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So, for those of you who haven't seen it all over social media so far, this is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. It was published the second week of June and is Ali Hazelwood's third full length adult romance.
It tells the story of Elsie. She's a theoretical physicist. And she is kind of navigating like I just graduated college, still am working with my mentor to try and figure out what's going on. She's an adjunct professor and she teaches at like 100 schools. So she's also applying for this really prestigious job at MIT. Also on the side, she does like this fake dating. So basically, that's an app you can contract essentially like a fake date to go with you to your family's dinner or whatever, right? And so she has this customer, she repeatedly goes on dates with him and they're just really good friends. Little does she know that when she shows up to her interview, the older brother of her fake date is one of the leading scientists in the division, actually is an experimental physicist. And theorists and experimentalists are like butting heads, so they're kind of enemies. And she didn't know that. And then he's like, "Wait, you're a physicist? What?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "But wait, when you are with my brother, you're not." And so then she has to like confront who she is when she's fake dating with her actual self, and then her feelings that she's developing towards the brother of the guy she's fake dating, kind of. And it's just this whole mess, but it's really interesting because it kind of explores the political side of STEM with like a rom-com kind of feel. Would you say that was a good way to kind of explain it?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. So, if you've read Ali's stuff before, she does the fake dating trope a lot. I thought this was a fun take on it. Like, yeah, there's still the element of fake dating, but it's not the same fake dating that we've seen in her books. So, I felt like it was a branch off for her um, from the writing that we've seen in her Kylo Ray fanfics that have now been published works. Anyways, I just think it's a fun look at the Taylor Swift line of pathological people pleaser, to quote Taylor Swift, because Elsie has pretty much given up having an individual identity. She has become so focused on being someone that others want to spend time around and molding herself to what that individual expects from her. And now, as a late 20s want to be professor, it's come to butt heads with what her professional goals are and what she thinks others need from her.
It's also really interesting because it's like a self-discovery of who she is. And then also Jack, the love interest, doesn't put up with it. He will call her out on, why are you doing this? Like, what do you want to do? Well, whatever. No, what do you want to do? And I need you to pick. And I really liked that about their dynamic of Jack being like, no, I see you. I see kind of like the problem that you've created, and I want you to work on it. So we're going to work on it together.
I also just felt like the characters had a little bit more depth than what we've seen from Ali in the past. Not only is Elsie kind of a problematic character on her own because she hasn't taken the time to learn her true likes and dislikes and expectations for herself, but Jack is a little bit more than a cardboard cutout male that we've previously seen from Ali Hazelwood. In her past novels, the male interest has literally just been there to be obsessed with the female character for years and come in and like offer them some kind of assistance and be their person. I feel like Jack actually has a little bit more depth. He has a little bit more of a purpose of being this kind of antagonistic character for Elsie while still having deep feelings for her that he's been trying to battle, right?
That kind of blends in perfectly. So one of my favorite portions of the book, um, Elsie gets mad at him and she's like, "You're not giving me any signals as to what you like or what you don't like. Like, how am I supposed to essentially mold myself to what you want if you're not doing that?" And he's like, "Have you ever just thought that maybe you are what I want? So that's why there are no signals." And I love that she did that, that she evolved as a writer to make Jack a little bit more a person, not just a cardboard cutout, but also to make him part of the narrative and him be like involved in pushing Elsie to become a better person. And I think that was really cool and mature. And it's a lot more like K.A. Tucker and her relationship between Jonah and Kala. And what we loved so much about that, which we've talked about in other videos, I felt like she was starting to pull in elements of that with this writing. So I 100% loved it.
One of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to get it a little bit wrong, but Elsie's having this conversation with him, like, wouldn't you rather I be this other person? And he's like, no, it'd be a total waste for you to be that person because I like you the way you are. And it's just like swoon worthy. There were so many moments of swoon worthy banter and interactions between them that I think kind of gave me rose colored glasses, and I overlooked some of the shortcomings and just really enjoyed the book because the banter and the dialogue was so fun. Okay, one more of my favorite things is his grandmother. The grandmother character is so curmudgeonly and just hilarious. Some of my favorite interactions throughout the book are scenes that have his grandmother in it. So before we move on to criticisms, I just had to say I loved that Ali finally started building up side characters that I connected with. Like, there were some side characters in the Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain that were a little bit, they served their purpose of helping further the story, but you didn't necessarily connect with them. I can't tell you their names. I can't remember instances of how they added to the story. Whereas the grandmother in Love Theoretically totally helped further the story and was funny while she did it.
I've got to also add, if you liked Love Hypothesis, you definitely should read this book because there's a cameo. And I was thrilled that she threw that in because it was cute. And you get to see a little bit of Olive and Adam after Love Hypothesis and what has happened and where they're at in their relationship. So that was really cute and started building her Ali Hazelwood STEM universe, which is fun because I didn't quite realize they were all connected. It makes sense that they are, but I like that she makes them connected.
Yeah, and there are two kind of throwbacks to Love on the Brain. There are two references to the characters from Love on the Brain. So she really is starting to connect her world all together.
I didn't catch the Love on the Brain ones, but that's because I don't remember Love on the Brain, to be honest. It was not my favorite. I did like this one better than Love on the Brain, but not by much.
So let's talk about why you didn't like it.
Quite frankly, I feel like nothing happened. Like, at the beginning, you have this conflict. She's going out for this job. She's dealing with like Jack figuring out who she is as opposed to the persona she was when she was dating. And he right up front like admits his feelings for her. And then they get together. And then she finds out something about the job. And that's at 50% mark. Like, there's still half a book left. And so far there's no conflict that's happened. There's nothing that either character is working towards other than Elsie's attempt to try and figure out who she is. But that wasn't enough to like drive the plot. And I think that's what it was missing, is a overarching plot that the characters were pushing for. Like in Love Hypothesis, you had the drama of what happened with the other professor and her goal to figure out how she was going to get funding for her research for the cancer and stuff like that. And it just, that wasn't a thing.
I get where you're coming from, but I kind of disagree because
okay.
I viewed Love Theoretically as more of a slice of life book instead of a plot-driven novel. So I think like it's valid to have the criticism that the plot wasn't that strong, because in my opinion, it was really just looking kind of at the slice of life. I feel like the conflict was what was going to happen with her professionally and personally. So instead of having conflict in the relationship, the conflict kind of existed of how she needed to grow as an individual and then what she was going to do professionally.
I think that's a valid remark. I think it just felt a little too normal as opposed to books. They're a little bit more like blown out of proportion or like these things that happen that you're like, not entirely plausible. And this one just felt like it could happen. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I think I wish I'd known going into it, it was a little bit more realistic because most of the time when you're reading rom-coms or especially Ali Hazelwood, it's not entirely realistic. So that just kind of had a disconnect in my head.
And I think that's why I actually liked this book more than her others, is because it felt realistic. I liked that you could see this coming to fruition in real life. Maybe there are a few parts that are a little exaggerated, but I felt like very plausible overall. Whereas like the fake dating and love hypothesis, you only see that in movies and books.
There's something so great about them that way too. Okay, my other major complaint, and we'll see how you rebut this one. I thought Jack had a lot of red flags that were never ever addressed. And by red flags, I actually mean more, probably red flags is a bad way to put it. I think Jack actually needed therapy, given things that happened in his past, figuring out who his mom was, and like a lot of little things that made him not trust people. I really had wished that they had incorporated that into their relationship more. I felt like his trauma from the past got completely brushed over and she was the only one who needed help and he was fine. When in reality, I think they both needed help and they could have used it as a way to grow together. But that wasn't addressed throughout the entire novel.
So I disagree because I think there are parts of his distrust and need for growth that were addressed. Like the apology part of the book, for example, did give him that room to say, hey, I was wrong about this thing. It had a major impact. Let me address it. Let me grow in this situation. I also just think it goes back to it's a slice of a couple of months that we're talking about. And it's not even a couple of months, really. It's like
True.
weeks. It's a very short amount of time. And because we don't have his point of view, I would argue that he probably has gone to therapy or is going to therapy, and we just don't know about it because it hasn't come up in their discussions.
I just think, while you are right, it was more of a slice of life kind of book. Again, it goes back to like my thoughts on Happy Place or similar books where I feel like we're almost rushing the ending in a way to make it so that things that are realistic are just kind of brushed past. So while he might have gone to therapy at some point, and I'm assuming he probably did because he had a lot of trauma from his childhood, I wish there had also been a moment of, I guess, reconciliation in a way, because they revealed this like deep trauma that he had, and it truly was never addressed between the two of them. While the apology, I loved the apology and I thought it was great and a great way to address what Elsie was mad about, I don't think it truly went to the root of what the problem was, which was his distrust. It more was apologetic and explanatory, and he did a great job with that. And I think that was resolved. But the root problem of his inability to fully trust her, I just felt like it wasn't super touched on.
So I don't know that he had an inability to fully trust her. I think he had an inability to fully trust others. And I think that was kind of the uniqueness of their relationship and why he was so invested, is because he felt like he could trust her. There was the element of like, oh, you've been lying to my brother. But that was kind of cleared up once the brother was able to have a conversation with him. So I understand why you're saying he didn't trust her. I felt like it was resolved in the conversations that they had with his brother and he had with his brother.
I just felt like there were little nuggets that could have been inserted to make their relationship a lot more healthy and a lot more realistic, a little bit more K.A. Tucker kind of feel
Yeah.
than Allie Hazelwood, Tessa Bailey. I think she's on her way to that. And you could see elements of that in this book, but it wasn't 100% there for me. And so that's, I think, why I felt like it was fine. But overall, honestly, not my favorite. I felt like I don't remember a lot of the book, and I read it on Monday.
So, what would you rate it?
I gave it 3 stars,
Okay.
which, considering how much I've complained about it, is interesting. But overall, I gave it 3 stars.
Okay. I gave it 5. So, it's one that I would reread again, and I probably would reread soon because I enjoyed reading it so much the first time, which to to give insight, like Love Hypothesis, I read last summer, like newly postpartum, and the way that my hormones were, I ended up rereading it, I think like 3 times in a month span.
Crazy.
A little insane. Love Theoretically, I am purposely making myself read other books instead of rereading it right now, even though I totally could dive in and reread it again. And because I feel that way about it, that's why I gave it 5 stars. So,
Valid. Yours is more of a emotional based response on your reviews, and they usually tend to be.
yeah. So I totally admit that there is room for criticism on this, but I would say if your complaint about Allie Hazelwood in the past is that every story is cookie cutter, I think this is proof that she's moving away from that.
And I agree. It definitely was a demonstration of what it's like for an author to evolve. There's a lot of elements from her other books, but it also was in a way that you couldn't necessarily predict. So I really appreciate that. And it does make me excited for whatever book she publishes next, because I think she is evolving as an author. She is maturing as a writer, and her stories reflect that.
Yeah. Okay, here's another tricky question. Where would you rank it on our spice scale?
That's what I'm currently thinking and debating, because this one was spicy. Like, I think it probably was her spiciest one yet. I'd probably put it more at a 6.
That's what I was going to say. I think this is
so kind of along the lines of like a Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn.
Yeah, I would say it's on par with Happy Place in my mind. I think they both have the same spice level, and it's tipping that scale to the 5.5, 6. So for me, this is like a 5.75, almost a 6 or a 6, because I don't think it was quite as spicy as a Not So Meet Cute.
I agree. It wasn't quite that spicy. It wasn't quite as spicy as It Happened One Summer, which is our other like reference book point for that number. But it was more spicy than A Simple Wild and Love Hypothesis, which is what we put as a 5. So I agree. I'd put it like a 5.75.
Let us know what you think about this book in the comments, because as you can tell, we're divided on our opinions on this. So help add to the conversation and discussion. We want to hear what you guys think about it. Have you read it? Did you enjoy it? You don't have to take sides, but let us know in the comments what you think.
You can take sides. It's okay. Don't forget to like and subscribe, watch another video, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.